Good afternoon, everybody. Now the time is 1 o'clock, Copenhagen time. And with me today, I have the CEO of Qlife, Thomas Warthoe. Qlife is a very interesting company within home diagnostics. Just a couple of practical issues for all the viewers, and welcome to you. Just post your questions in the chat on the right side, and I will pass them on to Thomas during the presentation. With that said, I would like to welcome Thomas Warthoe. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you, Klaus. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Warthoe. I'm the CEO of Qlife, as Klaus mentioned. We at Qlife are on a mission to bring blood biomarker testing at the clinical grade level into the homes of ordinary people like you and me. In other words, we want people to be able to access the blood data that you normally only would be able to access by having to ask your doctor and then go there to have blood drawn. So with our EcoHealth platform, you can sit at home and you can measure on a particular biomarker, maybe related to a condition or a disease that you may have. And most importantly, you can monitor on a continuous basis and find out whether the biomarker trend is going up or down. And then whether you are improving or the actual opposite. And this you can correlate to the activities that you may be doing to improve your condition, and thereby having a way to find out if those activities actually help or if you should be doing something else. So Qlife was built on 3 megatrends that we see in society today. We are all quite familiar with that healthcare systems are under tremendous burden. And it's really important, as you know, that preserving that important doctor time and try to decentralize all the routine tasks is something that can help to alleviate the burden on the healthcare systems. And this is something that Qlife would like to contribute with. We would like that when you meet your doctor, you already have the blood data that the doctor or the nurse can take a look at. So that's one of the big trends. The other trends that we are seeing is that people with a chronic disease is today actually very active in terms of trying to control their disease. They like to have a little bit of empowerment, and they typically do a lot of activities in order to sort of ease the pain. And here, this is something that Qlife also would like to contribute to. And then, of course, there's the general field of lifestyle diseases. We all know it. We should be trying to avoid to get into those bad numbers that brings you into a type 2 diabetes or a cardiovascular disease. So here, this is something that we also can contribute with. So we want you to be like this young woman here, sitting at home, relaxing, and basically having the EcoHealth platform in her home, being able to measure on various types of biomarkers that she may think relates to a condition that she have. And that should give her that sense of empowerment and comfort that tells her, exactly how her health status is doing. And there's one thing I usually say, and that is I find it curious here in 2022 that we modern people actually do not have access to the blood data that means the most to us, namely our health data measured in blood. Now, if you look at the market that we are addressing, you can look at this graph here. In the upper left-hand corner, you see the typical gadget devices that we all have come to learn and maybe is using on a daily basis. They've been very successful. We all know them. And in the lower right-hand corner, you have the professional devices that are delivering clinical grade data for the doctors and nurses. And Qlife, with our EcoHealth platform, is basically putting ourselves into a sweet spot in between there in the upper right-hand corner, where we are providing a self-testing device, which is really easy to use, and at the same time is providing clinical grade data that can actually be used immediately by the healthcare authorities. Now, so the opportunity with the Qlife share is that you are buying into a product which is already CE marked, and it's ready to launch additional clinical biomarkers. We actually have sold quite a few of our CE marked 30 minutes PCR COVID test. We were one of the players under the COVID pandemic that actually were capable of delivering a very quick PCR test and has sold quite good of that during the pandemic. And then we are a first mover company into a new emerging field of personal health monitoring and prevention. And I also try to stress that we are one of the companies, once we are well implemented, we will be accumulating a lot of data that are related specifically to your health. And of course, with respect for all GDPR issues and anonymous data, we can actually analyze that, and we can provide you with not only monitoring and diagnosis, but we can also help to prognose and risk stratify in order to see if, what are your chances for actually getting a disease maybe 5-10 years from today.
Thomas,
yes.
With that said, there's a couple of questions here.
Yes.
That I would like to address for you. First of all, on your market slide, where we see you and we see one other player, I know
yes.
you have this first mover advantage, and I find it very interesting. There's a question about what markets you will focus on in 2023, 2024. And then if we look into the area in the market where you are placed, if we look at this competitor, are you on the same markets? Is it a global rollout? Could you address that very short or briefly?
Yes, it's a very good question. And the company that I brought into this graph here is a company called Q Health. It's an American company. It's the only company that we actually consider to be a competitor. So you can say we have divided it a little bit between, the US market and the European market. But of course, there's room for lots of players in this emerging field. So that's not really a concern. But if you look at Q Health, I can actually say it's quite interesting that when we went public in 2020, March of 2020, we were around 15 people, and so were they.
Yeah.
And today they are around 1,200 people. We are around 50 people. And of course, I'm a little envious of that, but that's the nature of sort of the American way. But they are definitely growing very, very intensely. And the difference is actually that they can only address the molecular side. So all the DNA and RNA assays, PCR based, and so can we, but we are actually mostly focused on the immunodiagnostic biomarkers. So all the biomarkers that are protein based and related to, lifestyle diseases and all types of general diseases.
Very interesting. Then
yes.
There's another question here. Will doctors accept the sample you bring from your home test? That's interesting. You probably address it later on, but maybe we could take it now.
Yes, it's also a good question. But you can say, first of all, I have to stress that the EcoHealth platform is regulated the exact same way as the big instrumentation in the central laboratory. It's under the new IVDR regulations, so it's very, very tough. And there's no difference between a device sitting there in the central lab and our EcoHealth sitting in your home. So the data that comes out is the exact same quality. It follows the exact same guidelines. So there's no difference. And as a matter of fact, our devices at this time, our EcoHealth platform is being used in the professional setting. So it is being used already, in hospitals and clinics, etc.
I know you address this later on when we go into the platform, but your product is already approved in Europe, at least.
Yes, it is. We CE marked our COVID 30 minutes PCR test already. We sold in 21 around 39 million Swedish krona of that. We revenued that. So yes, we've been selling quite a lot, and that has been, I think it has been very good for us because it has helped to mature the platform. Obviously, we were under a lot of pressure to bring, to finalize the product and bring it into the pandemic, and that was a lot of hard work. But that has helped us a lot because the platform is ready, and essentially, we just need to implement more biomarkers onto the platform.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. Please carry on.
Sure. So, as I was mentioning, we went public in March of 2020, and it was actually just before the pandemic, which in itself was quite an interesting story. But the proceeds that we raised there, and since also we have raised additional proceeds in 21, all of that has been invested into these 5 pillars that I'm showing here. So first of all, we invested heavily into the quality of the platform. It's very important, when you want to mass produce a product, that the quality of the device is quite high, because otherwise, when you outsource it, the manufacturer is basically just replicating all your mistakes. So that's very important, and we have, as a matter of fact, outsourced our device to a big contract manufacturer called Scanfil, and they are in process of upscaling the device output. And then we have invested into the regulatory side, which is tremendously heavy today. It has gone from being a directive to a regulative under the EU, and that has just made it very, very complicated and difficult. But on the other hand, it has also meant that companies that are quite far in this process, I would say, have a competitive advantage, and we are very far in that. So again, I see us as basically the only real company, at least in Europe, that is going to be capable in the near term to bring a self-testing immunodiagnostic platform into the homes of ordinary people. And then we invested into production. We have CGMP approved laboratories, which is obviously necessary when you are producing under IVDR. We have invested into the commercial organization, which is quite effective at this time. And generally speaking, we have invested quite a lot into our people, and especially into our R&D organization, which is very, very skilled and has done some really nice innovations and improvements to the assays on a continuous basis. So basically, just to summarize our investment case, it builds on these 3 pillars here. We have a unique product. We are building our business on some mega trends that we see in society. And we have a launch-ready product where we expect to bring at least 2 biomarker capsules onto the platform every year. And that means that we are aiming to become take a first mover leadership position in this new emerging market.
A question here, Thomas, from the audience.
Yep.
So you mentioned here that in your conclusion that first of all you focus on the European market. You have this competitor; they take care of the US market. And of course, you will sometime in the future file for approval over there. With the European market, how many sales reps, or do you have an overview of that, to carry out the product? Because you're not going directly to the consumer.
No, this is also a good question. We are not going directly to the consumer, but we are seeing the consumer market as our ultimate markets, but distributions models are quite different there. So the viewer is absolutely right. We need to have a sales organizations, including sales reps, and we need to have a very skilled marketing organization that can complement that effort. And that's exactly what we are trying to build. And of course, there are limitations to how many sales reps you can have on the road, being a small company. So we are initially focused on Denmark and Sweden, which both of them we consider our home markets. And we are planning to have 2 to 4 sales reps in each market, each in Denmark and Sweden respectively, over the next 12 months to build that. So that's this level of sales organization we're going to have.
Is that so the clients you approach are they family doctors, or is it the obesity society, or could you elaborate a little on that?
Yes, but I will get back to that on my, I think, 3 slides from here. So
Okay,
let me.
yeah, of course, Thomas, carry on.
Yes, I will do that. So first, a little bit on the platform here. People typically get a little bit surprised to see how small it actually is, and it's only 11 centimeters in height, and you can see it here. And we also played a little bit with what I would call Scandinavian design. So it also looks like something that you would like to have in your home. That is nevertheless quite important. I think that people actually, want to have it on the night table or in the bathroom or whatever. And at the same time, I would like to stress that this is a very high-tech device that the founders of Qlife has spent basically all of their professional lives to gain the knowledge, being able to basically put all that technology into this small box. And of course, you can say, what's the purpose of making it small? But nevertheless, we think it's important that it's small and agile, and especially, of course, easy to use. That's important. It's a cloud-based system. So all the data that goes into the device, it connects up to the clouds, and it actually collects the scripts that it's going to execute, and after that, it stores the data into the cloud so that we can analyze the data and we can trend it, and you can look at different graphs, etc. There's one other feature I also would like to show here, and that is the capsule. One problem that we were faced with is that initially we were only measuring in whole blood, a drop of blood, but we realized relatively quickly that in order to keep that performance requirements that are today from most of the assays or biomarkers, you need to measure in plasma. So an example of how innovative our organization is, we actually have invented this little device here, which has become an accessory to the capsule, so that when you enter a drop of blood, you get around 5 microliters of clean plasma into a small capillary, which is then entered into the capsule, and the capsule is entered into the device, and then it connects to the cloud, as I said. That has been very important, because we claim that this platform is very versatile. So in other words, we can measure a whole range of different types of assays, biomarkers, and therefore it's extremely important for us to be able to measure in plasma. And just to give you an idea of some of the disease fields that we have all validated, that we can target different types of biomarkers. Under here, I listed 8 different areas. Initially, we are focused on chronic diseases, and after that, we will possibly move into cardiometabolic. We already have an assay, the SARS-CoV-2 assay in respiratory health, and we are working on a combined 2-in-1 SARS influenza A and B assay. Wellness and metabolism is also an interesting field. Women's health, men's health, sexual health, and also an interesting area of vitamins and minerals. A lot of people are eating supplements, and we can actually go in and verify whether those supplements is actually you're taking the correct dose, or whether they're actually having any effect on you. And that also relates a little bit to the sports field, where we have been quite engaged. Under the pandemic, we were the company that did all the COVID testing for the professional football Superliga here in Denmark. So we are quite well implemented into the sports field as well. Then I wanted to give you a few words on our strategy forward, maybe also relating to one of the questions that you posed before. We divide our world into these 2 major sections here. First, the chronic ill, and second, the consumer self-testing. And we see ourselves being in the chronic disease field for the next 18-24 months. focused on especially people that have some level of arthritis. And that could be all the way from rheumatoid arthritis, where CRP, our first biomarker, C-reactive protein, relating to an inflammatory stage, is a direct indicator of disease progression for people with rheumatoid arthritis. But all the way to people that are non-diagnosed but still feel they have an arthritis problem. Osteoporosis is another field. We are also focused on a genetic disease called PKU, and then in general other autoimmune diseases to start with. Totally in Europe, there's around 50 million people that are diagnosed with chronic disease, so there's plenty to go for. And we expect to target both the professional segment and also, professional segment meaning all the institutions where people that are diagnosed are actually seeing a physician and getting their data done, and possibly the treatment is adjusted. But also into the what we call clinical retail, which we would define as functional medicine clinics, physiotherapy, dietary clinics, etc., where especially people that not necessarily are diagnosed, but still feel they have a problem and is receiving treatment. And here it's quite interesting. We are seeing quite a lot of interest from that field because our C-reactive protein tests can actually validate whether the treatment is working or not. And then again, in the longer term, we will move into the consumer market where you can define a whole range of segments where people possibly would have an interest in a specific biomarker that we can develop, and they can monitor on that on a continuous basis. Our intention, I should say, is not to sort of have a whole panel of physicians' office biomarkers, because we think that would be too much information for the consumer anyway. We are focused on sort of one problem, one biomarker, maybe two biomarkers related to a conditions that you may be concerned about. And truth is that most of us actually always is concerned about something that we would like to understand a little bit better. And then to the question that was actually posed. So our go-to-market strategy in the near term is actually divided like this. We divide it into two categories: disease control and health optimization. Disease control means that here we are going into the clinical institution that are treating especially arthritis. That means all the rheumatology departments where we know there's a big need for sort of keeping the patients at home instead of having to take them into the institution. With our Ego Health, they can sit at home, they can measure C-reactive protein, they can send in the data, and the physician there can adjust medication based on that if needed, and based on other types of metrics that these people are performing. But the point is that you can keep the patient at home and save some time and cost and maybe quality of life there. And the sort of private sector that we are looking at is the clinics that I mentioned before, where people are coming because they are concerned about a problem they have, they feel the pain, and they would like to understand it better. And we are also quite interested in the professional sports field, where we have validated that the clubs, it could be football, it could be other types of sports, they actually have a quite big interest in measuring on different types of metrics, and is interested in adding clinical grade data on top of that to really understand, how the body is performing. So over the next 36 months, we are planning to bring these biomarkers that I'm showing here to market. CRP is our launch biomarker. It stands for C-reactive protein, and it's a biomarker that relates to in your inflammatory stage. It's a quite sort of unspecific biomarker, but it relates to a lot of different conditions. And it's a very big market. CRP is the biomarker in the world that's used the most. And we, of course, is targeting to move some of that market share away from the professional segment into the private segment. Then we are focused on a biomarker called phenylalanine. It's a relatively small but lifelong disease which hits 1 out of 10,000 children. It's especially severe in the early years, teenage years as well. And these people are on a lifelong diet where they cannot eat protein. And it would make a great difference for them to be able to measure their blood at home. Today, they can only do it once a week, send off to the central lab and wait for the data 3 days later. And it would be so much greater if they could get the data immediately. And then we are combining the CRP with the vitamin D capsule, which is more and more recognized to be an important player for various types of conditions. And that would be a really nice complement to have for the chronic segment. We are working on a SARS flu. We actually won a WHO project some time ago and has been working on a combined COVID influenza test. And that test is quite interesting, and it's an example of a respiratory test that Qlife has the capability to bring to market, and maybe also a little bit with a view to future. If there should be future pandemics, we have a platform that could go into the homes of people and actually measure on PCR-based testing, data directly from the home. And then we are bringing a lipids test, all your cholesterols, LDL, HDL, triglycerides, and total cholesterol in one capsule, which is just also, always an important biomarker to verify that your cholesterol levels are okay. It's important to follow. And then my last slide here is we have just finalized an emission, and I just wanted to mention to you all how we are going to use the proceeds from that emission. So most of that is going into bringing the CRP test to market and get it out there and executing on the plans that I was talking about. And then we also focused on the fee test, getting it towards the clinical trials. We are upscaling our outsourced instrument production so that we have enough volume. And that should mean that we have revenue from our CRP capsule starting end of this year and all through 2023. And of course, increased production volumes to sustain those sales. And once we hit the second half of next year, we are expecting also that the fee test should be ready so we can launch that. We will invest into expanding the commercial organization. We will invest into R&D so that we can continue to launch these biomarkers, which means in turn that we should have a profitable CRP business starting in 2024. We should see revenue from our fee capsules end of 2023. And essentially, we are targeting to have positive cash flow from operation towards the end of 2024. And parallel with that, we should be able to launch 2 biomarker capsules per year forward. So that was all for me. I thank you for listening.
Good, Thomas. Thanks a lot. Good presentation. Sure. And first of all, we open up a couple of questions here. There's a question from Kim regarding prices. And Kim asked about price setting in both the capsules, but also the machine, I think. We know that in your target markets, Denmark and Sweden, as of today, it's free of charge to get a blood test. What are now, when we look into the chronic diseases, you mentioned on your slide, it's paid by the public. What about the health and nutrition side? And can you mention what prices we talk about? One thing is the unit, but you also have the capsules.
Yes, this is very true. And what I can say is that when we sell into the professional market, of course, it's the public who is paying. So if you are diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, it would be paid, by your institution, and you would get the device. But once we move into the private sector, it will be yourself that have to pay for the device, just like any other gadget, because it's essentially something you choose to do. And currently, our device is it's sold at 995 euros, including TVA. But we are targeting over the next 24 months as volumes upscale to get it down to around 350 euro, because we want it, to be a device that everybody can afford. And we think 995 is a little high for that. But although we are seeing that, some people are willing to pay that because they would like to have the information. And the capsules are the CRP capsule that we are going to launch. We expect it to actually be down around 12 euros per capsule, and that's the price tag we believe is reasonable. And of course, it's important to stress that we want it to be reasonable, because we want people to use these capsules to monitor themselves and trend themselves. The important thing with our system is really to be able to see over longer periods of time if your graphs are going up or down. That's the whole purpose of the system. It's not to measure once, it's to create those graphs.
So you can say that the price or your price target is less than an iPhone, which is very interesting. And secondly, the price of the capsules. When you buy the device, you get the full kit, yeah. So you get the blood sampler. With this blood sampler, are you able to test? When you make the blood test, you get the plasma. Are you able to test for different indications? So
no, you are not. But it's a good question. But you can say typically you cannot have more than one test in one capsule. Sometimes you can have two. And for instance, in the case of lipids, cholesterols, you actually get 4 data points. Okay. But typically but that also go, a little bit, I have to be honest and say, to our business model, because we want people to burn capsules. We want them, so we don't really want to give, but it's also scientifically, it also is not possible.
So that's a little like Nespresso and other big players out there. You buy the machine and then you have to buy the capsules. But are you going to make a subscription-based model for the private segment, Thomas?
Indeed, we are. That is really what we are targeting to do. We would like to put people on subscriptions so that they receive the capsules on a continuous basis and use them. And then the device basically is factored into the payment you do every month, so that you actually don't purchase the device. And here we would actually guarantee then that you always have the best device available under this subscription.
Then a little back to your competitor. Are they launching? There's a question here from Frank. Are they launching the same type of device in US? Do you know that, Thomas, or is it a different setup?
It's conceptually it's the same concept. The technologies are a little bit different, and I should not point at others, but one of the problems that they have is that they have to go through what's called a de novo application, because the technology is unknown, and that means in the US you have to go through very long approval processes. Our technology is built so that there's nothing hocus pocus in it. It's well-known methodologies, reagents, chemistries, which are being used everywhere today. So our regulatory pathways are much shorter. So that's a big advantage.
For sure. And then there's a question here from Hansen about where are you manufacturing the products? First of all, the device, the hardware, but the software. The software in this term, the capsules.
Well, I'm proud to say that everything is being manufactured here in Ballerup, where I am right now. We do everything in-house, and that goes from the capsules, the chemistries, the softwares, the devices. We have very, very skilled people here, and we're doing everything. But we are, in terms of the devices, we have started a process, because we are essentially not a manufacturing company in that sense. So we are going to outsource the device manufacture so that we can get real volume. We need high volumes. But we keep the capsule manufacture in-house, because we regard that as really key competency for us. So that will stay in-house.
For sure. Yeah, well, I don't think there's any further questions. Let's see. No further questions. Well, Thomas, really nice. Let's see. No, there's nothing coming up here. So, Thomas, thanks a lot for your presentation and this first introduction to Qlife. We will soon hear more about the company and try to deep dive into some of the areas, hopefully.
Hope so, and it was a pleasure to be here. I appreciate all the good questions.
Yes.
And I look forward to coming back. Thank you very much.
Well, there's a question coming up here. If you have 2 seconds, Thomas.
Sure, absolutely.
It's of course. Oh, we forgot to ask about that. It's Kim again. He asked about the patenting your device and everything. Could you very briefly elaborate on that?
Yes, I can very quickly say that we actually have 3 IPs. 2 of them are on the device that are protecting each core functionalities within the device, and which makes it possible to make the device so small. So that's actually something that we regard as being important, because people don't want to have a big, centrifuge at home or something like that. So there is 2 IP on the device, and then there's an IP on the plasma filtration that I was talking about, which is also quite essential, and which I think will keep competitors out, because if they cannot measure in plasma, I can honestly say that it will be very difficult for them to measure this broad range of biomarkers that we can.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Thomas. With that said, thanks a lot for today. Thanks a lot for all the good questions from the viewers. And thanks for a great presentation, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Appreciate it.
Enjoy your day.
You too.